Hello, everyone. God damn it, Jelly. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to For the Minions, the kind of weekly podcast all about upcoming third-person MOBAs. This week, we're going to talk about the Predecessor stress test. Of course, some new marketing strategies coming out of Vault. Overprime announced an 11-day test. We don't know when. And then we'll just talk about Ethereal a little bit as well. I'm your host, the Mangoose. Joining me, as always, is my friend and co-host, Jellyknees. How you doing, Jelly?
I am fantastic, Mangoose, after getting you to slip up the intro for 2 whole seconds. But with us this week, we've got Infamous. Welcome, Infamous. Go ahead and give us the lowdown of how you got started in Paragon, your favorite hero, favorite lane, all that good stuff.
I mean, technically, I played the original Paragon for about a combined total of like 40 minutes. I was young, like I'm 19, so I was like young when I played OG Paragon, and I didn't know what
really old.
Yes, I didn't know what a MOBA was at the time, so I thought it was just a third-person shooter. I played it and went, I have no idea what's going on. I was one of those players. I like the robot dude, and then I went, I don't know what's happening. So I fell out of that. I got into Paragon. Like, I've been interested in Paragon ever since I heard that there was a revival project, because I find that type of stuff cool. And I wanted to play Vault. I wanted to get into them for a while. I didn't have a PC. I got one a few months ago. I picked up Vault for myself and a friend so we could play. I've been having a ton of fun ever since. Lane-wise, I mainly play like mid, off, and a bit of jungle. I don't just main one lane. Favorite characters is probably Richter.
Hell yeah.
Richter, a Crunch is fun. Very, very fun. Mangers, you and I have similar taste in characters.
Right on.
I really like Gideon. I love how his passive works in Vault.
Mm-hmm.
Just being rewarded for hitting your abilities in quick succession with a third follow-up is so much damage in the mid to late game. So much damage when you get to throw 2 rocks at people instead of 1. But yeah, that's my... Sorry, yeah?
No, you're fine. So you said that you bought Vault for yourself and a friend, and I have a very important question for you. Are you two still friends? Because I gotta say, after Mangoose and I play any of these games together, Mangoose doesn't speak to me for days. So.
We both have a fair bit of MOBA experience outside of Vault, so we flamed enough. We flamed each other enough to be able to get over it by the end of the match. Normally,
you have to apply the caveat of 90% of the time.
Yeah,
everybody has those games though.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, yeah, we obviously still hang out a lot. But yeah, that's my kind of how I got into Smite. Paragon. Oh.
One of those things. One of those games.
Yeah.
You know?
I started with Smite, realized it's a shitty MOBA right now. I love Smite. It's not in a good spot. No, act like they're getting doxed. They're getting doxed right now, so their servers are non-existent.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. There's been a few Smite content creators who played the stress test, the Predecessor stress test.
Yeah, it's all
okay.
They're getting big numbers too. Yeah.
Yeah. If only they'd look at Vault, because God knows they need the numbers.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into the updates. We're talking about, of course, the biggest news was the Predecessor stress test. This one was actually successful. Their last one, they went down fairly quickly. This one, I kind of had to adjust the way I thought of this because it was just a stress test and not an alpha test. At first, I was kind of pissed that they were missing quite a few features, but I get it. They just wanted to stress the servers, and they were successful in doing so and letting people just experience the base game. And I had a great time with it. Infamous, did you get a chance to play?
I did. I got like 7-8 games in
Nice.
over the course. Yeah, it was also really nice to have really low ping for West Coast servers. So yeah, I had some good time with it.
Jelly,
Yeah.
what'd you think of Pred?
I think it was fun, right? You and I, Mangoose, had many games that we got in there and just went in there and dominated these games. So, I mean, of course, it's always a good time when you're just trashing kids, right? I am like 50-50 with you on the stress test, so they get a little bit of a pass on implementing features. Part of it, though, is that in the 8 months since their last stress test, the changes were not there.
Right.
And so not even an implementation of features necessarily, but just things that existed 8 months ago still existed in this test. The main difference being the servers worked and there were a couple extra characters. Past that, there were very, very few changes in the 8 months that we've seen.
My main concern is something that has plagued Predecessor since the very beginning, since their very first March 19th, or March 2019 alpha test, is client-side server prediction. It felt off in this test. It felt off way back then. It's something that has just plagued them, and I don't know why they can't quite get it right. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you face Steel in the off lane and you thought, I stunned him, how was he able to just charge right through me? It's because both things would happen. There were several instances where one of two things should happen. Like, I rooted a Sevarog and he dashed. What should happen is either he dashed out of my root and he gets away, or he doesn't dash and my root hits and he's rooted. What happened is the subjugate lands, he dashes, and then he's rooted on the other side. So both things happened. And that's just poor server prediction, I think.
I mean, I saw several times that like there was a Richter pull or a thunk thrown by a Narbash, and yeah, similar things happen where it's this weird like double effect of what's going on, and it just feels odd and feels bad.
Right.
I didn't experience that much myself when I played, but I mainly played like mid lane and a bit of off.
Okay.
I didn't know, so mainly like Steel and Howitzer because I wanted to try How. So I didn't know something much myself.
Howitzer was a lot of fun, yeah.
He was also brutal.
Yeah.
Like his ult with the bonus auto attack range and the
Oh my god.
cooldown. It's like, and the damage reduction on his missile was like nothing. You could still just snipe people and they could do nothing up to you. It's crazy.
Which is the worst feeling when I'm playing like Chimera and I see Howitzer go up. I'm like, well, it's been fun. Hopefully I survive the next 6 seconds because if not, I can do nothing.
The amount of phase that just looked at me and I'm gonna throw my needles at you. Yeah, this will work. You have rockets.
Work for me.
Yeah, but you knew how to poke people down. Most didn't.
Richter pulling howitzers out of their ultimate was always a fun sight whenever it actually happened. Yeah. You didn't see it happen too very often.
There was a clip, I think it was Windu, that I saw of Kalari double jumping up to Howitzer and ulting through him to kill him in his ultimate.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, good.
I think I've seen that clip. That looks really cool.
Also, that as a Howitzer would feel so bad.
Oh yeah, I am curious, Mangus, because Richter's your favorite character, right? From Paragon. Which Richter feels better to you, Fault or Predecessor, from what you've experienced?
Predecessor Richter, I think, feels incredibly. I'm using way too many words here. It felt better. Predecessor Richter felt better than False Richter. However, I think False Richter makes a better jungler and offlaner. Like, he really fell off if you tried that in Pred.
His passive is what carries him in Fault.
Yes, exactly. And that passive just, like, him getting a shield was kind of cool, but it does not compare to his passive in Fault. So he was definitely more of a support pick than in Predecessor than he even was at Paragon, I think.
Yeah, it feels like Fault likes flex picking a lot more with characters.
Right.
Like, feels like characters are designed to be like, you can like Richter's a good example. You can play him in 3 roles. Crunch can be played in two roles. Maybe support is a hyper aggressive with his like 2-second CC on his empowered knockup. So like a lot of characters can be played in multiple. Like Morgesh can be played mid and off. It is with Predecessor. It felt like most characters were kind of locked into their main role, with like maybe Steel as the exception. At least that I noticed.
And yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think this leads kind of into an interesting topic that I want to talk about is, how did you guys feel? I guess we'll start with you, Infamous. How did you feel about the balance of Predecessor's stress test weekend here?
I mean, given that this wasn't even a gameplay test, balance, I didn't think much of it. Howitzer felt crazy powerful, but I was playing people who, I've played Fault enough to be fairly good, and I've played MOBAs in general enough to have that type of game sense naturally. So it's hard to say, but it felt all right. It didn't feel crazy, but Howitzer at least felt little overtuned with how much he could poke and how much damage he pumped out. Other than that, it's not so much balance, just some questions I have about design, like why does Steel's Bash deal 8% max health damage? Why does Richter's Hook do the same thing?
So-
Why is that's not how you design tank abilities?
Yeah. If you look at their heroes across the board and their items across the board, whoever's on that design team that's doing the balance has a fetish about max health.
Yeah.
Because there are
Right?
so many things that deal max health damage. It's ridiculous.
I was so confused, especially with Rick. Why is that on his hook?
Oh my god. Like
If anything, make that the ult or something, or his one. So it's not just a cross fight. Just it already pulls and stuns. Why is,
Like I said, there's a fetish of like it should do damage. What kind of damage should it do? Max health. Do max health. Please God, do max health. Right? Like it's ridiculous. And I think that goes into something you and I talked about during the weekend, Mangoose, is that early game, the time to kill is fairly long. Right? And it's probably just slightly too long in my opinion.
Yep.
But then late game, it turns into instantaneous deletion no matter who you are, what character you're playing. If you have anything past 4 items, congratulations, you can 100 to 0 anybody in the game because you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that ties into part of that max health obsession that we see, or high ratios across the board for a lot of these characters.
The problem with having percent max health damage on a basic ability, especially for like a Steel offlane, it punishes you for building health.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's interesting on a character that's designed around that.
Mm-hmm.
Not Steel.
I personally never had a game where I felt like anybody was too tanky for me to fight.
I know.
Exception being Rampage, but that was more because of who Rampage is, more than it was an itemization thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. TTK. I saw people saying that TTK. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
You make it.
I saw people saying that the TTK in Fault was faster in the late game. It's like no. Best example is Gideon in his ult gets a shield and his ult ticks like 4 times for maybe a third of your health if you're a squishy, maybe half if he's building full like fuck you damage.
Mm-hmm.
In Predecessor, I was one shot by a Gideon ult many times. It's like that is not that like Gideon can one shot you. I was one shotting entire teams as Howitzer because I can just spam rockets and slows and then ult them and get like the double, triple easy. Tanks never felt like they could. Okay, yeah, no, you're right. Balance felt weird. Now that you're mentioning it, yeah, tanks did not feel tanky.
I felt it the most on Sevarog. I got to max stacks on Sevarog and well beyond that, and it felt like I was getting squishier rather than more powerful with Sevarog, which you should not feel that way getting to a max stack Sevarog.
It's this obsession with max health. Even Chimera's E was changed that it consumes your stacks and gives you a percentage of max health in return for your stacks. Why? Like that is just so unnecessary on a character that already heals a ridiculous amount. To give him an ability that gives him max health healing is ridiculous.
Okay,
like that doesn't make any sense. And why whatever this obsession with max health is has to go out, because it's like you said, Mangoose, max stack Sevarogs should not feel squishier at the end of the game than they should feel powerful, right? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Like,
no, go ahead.
I feel like part of the issue is also just like item balance. It feels like it specifically with like item cost compared to like value ratio is you want defense items to be cheaper and give good amount of stats, so you can give those tanks a bit less gold so they can't just buy damage and win the game. But when you have tank items that's too expensive and give like 40 protections, because all MOBAs use the same formula to get damage mitigations, if I'm not mistaken. It's like if it gives you 40 protections, that's nothing if it's the same cost as something that gives like 80 power, 90 power for a mage. It's nothing.
Yeah, the offset of damage mitigation to just flat damage isn't there. That's why you saw Rampages, who were just inherently tanky because of his kit, build full damage and just destroy people. I mean, I had games, and granted, Feng Mao is a little squishier in Predecessor, but I had games where I'm going 20-0 on Feng Mao, and then late game I run up to a Rampage and he dominates me. Like, I don't break a quarter of his health and he 100-0s me. That's ridiculous. And I'm full build and he's got 3 items. Because he's just way too tanky and way too much damage.
It was hard for me, I think, to gauge where their balance was because of playing like Fault and Overprime, and like because we play all of these games as they come out as much as we can. We're like on a whole different level now than the average Paragon player that hasn't played Paragon for 4 years, and then they step into this Predecessor stress test. Especially with Fault, because Fault has such a tiny fucking player base that it's just everybody that plays Fault has been playing it for years, and they're real fucking good at it. It's either that or it's somebody's Smurf that's still real fucking good at Fault. So whenever I play Fault, I feel so weak, and I feel like I'm not very good. And then I step into Predecessor, and like you could take the weakest Fault player, stick them into Predecessor, and they will just into that stress test weekend. I won't say Predecessor, but at least into these stress test weekends, and they will absolutely wreak havoc. Like the only times, like a lot of the times when I was like, holy shit, this team's actually good, I would look at the names and be like, I recognize that name from Fault, you know? Like that's why they're actually being competitive right now. Other than that, like it was stomps all weekend long. So it was like, I thought Howitzer was weak until I played Howitzer, and I was like, oh, he's not weak at all. He's fucking strong as hell.
Yeah.
So I can't pull the figures, but because somehow they're doing something weird that after their stress test, you can't find the figures for what their stress test was. But from checking on Sunday morning, they had a peak of 7,000 players concurrent.
Nice.
And then they were hovering around 5,500 to 6,000 the majority of the weekend consistently.
That's actually really good. That's impressive.
That's super good for them, 100%.
Yeah, whatever they're doing with marketing is working, because it is by far the most popular of the para-zombie projects, at least in North America. I think Overprime might have them in Asia, but in North America, Europe, Predecessor is just so wildly popular amongst the community, and it's for a good reason. Like the game was so smooth, it looked fantastic, it sounded great. It played really well. Predecessor had a lot to offer. But like you said, Jelly, again, there wasn't that much change over time. They still had a few issues. There was stuff that it kind of shed light on some of the positives of Fault too. Like something that was a problem in Fault a long time ago was you would get hung up so easy on friendly hitboxes. And it's something they addressed and fixed. That's not been fixed in Predecessor. Like trying to get around a Richter, you had to like walk all the way around him because you would just get stuck on his arms and shit. And that just, Predecessor still has quite a long ways to go, I think, before they'll be ready for a full release.
It feels like with Predecessor, like compared to Fault feels like they had to get it right or they'd come back to it later. With Predecessor, it feels like they've had the time to polish every little thing, but they've just spent too much time refining something that was already by far good enough. Like Richter's a good example. Like the detail, like his chains actually having physics when he walks, unlike in Fault. Or just like the extra particle effects or details or sound effects. Everything's polished so well on him. And then you play Steel and he doesn't have sound effects when you're last hitting minions. Literally no sound. It definitely shows that difference. And where they definitely need to improve.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I also want to highlight whoever's doing their visual effects, whoever's sprucing up the old Paragon effects is doing a fantastic job, because a lot of those effects look really, really good.
Yeah, they do.
Like the Richter's lightning that comes off of him when he's in his E, I think looks incredible. It's crisp, but it's not too distracting at the same time. There's a lot of those little details like that I loved being able to see throughout the weekend.
Little things too, like I said in my Faye video that you can't plant flowers along the map anymore with their basic attacks. You can! Like I pasted that video and Rubo's like, "What? I added that in specifically because you reminded me of that." And I went back and looked, and sure as shit, whenever I hit a wall or something, there'd be a little flower sticking out of the wall.
Nice detail. Yeah.
You still love doing that?
Like, there's a lot of passion for them. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that I want them to change, as much as I want cast settings in there, because I can't stand having to left click to cast an ability.
Yeah.
Right. That will remain very high on my list. But their UI needs help. Their UI is so dated and takes up so much of your screen that it hurts. And mainly talking about the shop and the scoreboard. There is no reason both of those things are taking up the entirety of your screen. It just feels overwhelming to get hit with your full screen of information. Right? It's just, I mean, you look at literally any of the other Paragon projects or Ethereal even, and they've all gone away from that design because it's too in your face. It's too obtrusive. It takes up too much room. And I really think Predecessor, it's been something, at least the scoreboard has been something I know has been complained about since their first more open test, right? And so, come on, we got to do something about this.
Like, it's impressive when a game like Ethereal, because I played the last test you guys did. It's impressive when something like Ethereal that is like twice as complex and has twice as much stuff going on your screen in the game at any moment, has a cleaner HUD that gives you all the information you need in like half the screen space.
Mm-hmm.
And like it takes up like half, like the amount of real estate that Predecessor's HUD takes up in menus is that was, it was claustrophobic. Like, why are items so big? Like, it felt so like almost suffocating with just how much there was there. It was like, okay, I just want to look at all your items. Why are the 3 items you want me to buy literally blacking out the rest of my screen? You're yelling at me to buy the upgrade. Let me figure out the rest of my build before I decide that, please.
It's one of those things. It's hard, right? Being able to design a UI that is both minimal but informative is the impossible task. Right, so you have to find places to make concessions, but at the same time, we can do better than that.
Yeah. Again, I'm on the side of, I give them. Also, I wasn't familiar with the earlier tests, so this is my first experience with Predecessor, so I will be more lenient, just for myself. But this was, again, like, this was a server test. They just launched it and said, we don't know if our servers are good. You test them so we know if they fail again. Go. Like, them having a crappy UI when the game's not even remotely available for more than a few days, every few months, it's like, you need to fix it, but I get it.
There is an amount, that I will admit to this 100%, that, look at my camera freezing right as I'm talking.
Oh, there you go.
Thanks for that.
Oh god, that's going to make the recording weird.
Hey, you're welcome, Mangoose. Is that it's one of those things of, because Predecessor has the following they have, people give them a lot more slack than they give things like Faults, Ethereal, Overprime, right? That when Ethereal released their first gameplay video, now granted, the gameplay was not the highest tier on the planet, but the amount of comments we got about our UI being too cluttered and all those things blew my mind. And then I see very similar in cluttered of UI for Predecessor, and nobody's talking about it. It's like, what?
No,
it's like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm gonna be the guy if I have to be the guy, right? Like,
I think I know why that. Obviously, I think you'd know better, but here's my assumption as to why that mentality is. People want Paragon. People don't just want like a good 3D MOBA in a lot of ways. They want Paragon. Paragon is what they remember. They have like all the good memories, and they don't remember travel mode, and they don't remember duo and solo being the same lane on both sides. Which I think, Mangus, you said you actually liked that.
I loved it. Yeah.
But most people were like, that's not how you do lanes, or just like the card shop getting bad, or any of that. People don't remember the good memories. So when they look at Predecessor, they go, "This is what we want. We know it's going to take time, but we don't care. We want this. Give us this." Like, even when it comes to the marketing, like you're talking about their marketing being good, they haven't marketed that much. It's mainly been a lot of very positive, hyped word of mouth that has spread and gotten people thinking, no, this is great. No, this is going to be great. There are issues now, but who cares? This is going to be great.
And I think a large part of it too is it's easier to go against the grain when there's only 400 people talking about the game versus 40,000 people talking about the game. Right? You being the odd man out of 39,000 other people feels a lot more difficult and a lot more daunting than when you're one of 400 people and you're saying like, oh, Fault needs this, right? It's a lot easier to feel like your opinion means more, or it's a lot easier to go against the grain in that way when there's less pressure from the other side to come against you. I mean, and it's evident just looking at the communities whenever you talk about one or the other. Yeah. Right? When you talk about Fault, the Predecessor and Overprime communities come out of the woodwork to be like, oh, Fault's terrible. Get out of here. The trash game, right? And but if you tried to do that against Predecessor, that same community would beat you with your words and absolutely come back to smack you with it. So it's a very different thing.
Yeah. And then you have Mangoose saying that he thinks Fault is the best one. That was from the best one to play at this exact moment. I think that's what you said on your last podcast.
Yeah.
You saying that? But
yeah,
no,
I mean, it's tough, especially as a content creator, to say anything negative about Predecessor because it does have such a huge positive following, and it's a following of people that have trusted other content creators that have just blindly said that Fault sucks or that Overprime sucks without actually trying those games. I try my very best to be as non-biased as possible and give each and every one the greatest opportunity I can, and I don't hold back because it helps them improve. Like, I think Predecessor was great, but there were problems, and people need to point those problems out, or they're going to continue to exist.
Yeah, I agree.
So I guess I have one last point I want to talk about with you guys about the test weekend, is despite Mangoose, I mean, the majority of our games turned into stomps, right? Usually in our favor, but that was when we were together. But even games I played by myself were almost always someone got super, super fed, or multiple people got super, super fed. But those stomps didn't translate into wins unless the people surrendered. Most of the time,
it was a little difficult.
Game times were 45 minutes, even despite two members having 20 plus kills and the other team being all less than 10.
See, I thought they had pretty good pacing. Like, I had most of my games were like 25 to 40 minutes.
Yep.
But in stomps, that's weird. That's the thing.
Yeah, that is weird for a stomp.
If you're stomping, right, you should stomp all the way through. But the closing out of the game, similar to Overprime, honestly, the closing out of the game was fairly difficult.
The pacing felt... It felt like the inverse of what Fault has. Fault has a very slow early game. First, like, 15 or so minutes, Fault can feel very slow, and then it ramps up, and then it's kind of fast late game. It's still kind of slow. But Predecessor felt like the pacing early is better. Like, it feels you're doing more. At least, again, I mainly played mid because you have buffs to do. Your waves come a little bit quicker. It feels like, at least. You're actually like trading with your lane opponent more, and jungle's more of a presence. But then late game, it just gets to like the mage one shot, the ADC's 3-shotting you, the tanks do nothing. So good luck having any peel or strong front line. The jungle, if they're a bruiser, they're just gonna massacre you. If they're Kalari, then they do nothing because it's Kalari.
Poor Kalari.
Sad days.
Kalari indeed.
But yeah, I mean, it wasn't as bad as Overprime, I don't think, because Overprime games went consistently over 60 minutes.
Yeah, they definitely had a problem at Overprime
but closing it out felt ridiculously hard, even when it was a stomp. When it's an even game, whatever. I'm way more lenient to even games, right? But even when it was a stomp, it was really hard to close it out. And I think and we talked about it at the beginning, because of that time to kill getting so fast at the end of towards the end of the game, really the 35-minute mark, then being a stomp means nothing. Even though you're not even at full build yet. Right? It's not like everyone's slowly getting to the same point. It just hits a point where everybody turns on at 4 items and the time to kill just drops like a brick.
Power spikes are crazy.
Even being 20 kills up on somebody, you still get annihilated in 2 seconds no matter what.
Drongo certainly felt like that. It felt like you could just get your ass kicked the whole game by Drongo and still win the game at the end, but just all of a sudden you would have 3 items and just bam, you're off to the races.
And I had the same experience with the Fae, fighting against the Fae, that when she hit 3 or 4 items, she dropped an ultimate and I died. That was it. Like there was no question about it. No matter how fed I was, no matter anything, if she hit her ultimate, I was just dead.
I think the Fae was a little overtuned, but
mid lane was a bit overtuned. I think mid laners, their power spikes were crazy. Jungles couldn't stop them. Tanks couldn't endure them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like. Yeah. Also, I think one of the issues with actually closing out games, you just didn't do damage. Like your minions died too quick to towers. Mm-hmm. You didn't do enough damage to them, and minions took so long where if a wave even just took some damage from a caster using AoEs or whatever, you just couldn't. If you were missing even one damaged player, you just couldn't push a tower. You couldn't push the core. You just go do objectives if they're up. If not, farm.
Yeah.
Conversely, every once in a while, you would just have a massive wave in your lane for like nobody had touched that lane from either team, like for a while, but suddenly you have like 50 fucking minions coming at your tower. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah. It felt like it was you either had the weakest wave or the world's biggest wave. There was no in between.
Yeah.
But we had that game, Mangoose, where you set up the lane and it turned into like 5 or 6 minion waves stacked up together.
Yeah. Just from one wild growth or untamed growth from the Fae. I used one untamed growth to set the lane to kill the ranged minions, and from that it turned into a fucking tsunami of minions.
Yeah. And when the lanes aren't that long, like they are, but they're not, that shows that's how many waves are coming through in the time it takes to get to a tier 3 tower or the inhibitors.
I forgot about that. We were like a team fight in mid, and like we kind of like both teams lost a bunch of people, and then it was like you were like, hey, wait, look at right. Like just plunged through their inhibitors straight to the core. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, dude, it was crazy, and that's nuts.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's about all I had for Predecessor. You guys have any final thoughts on the stress test?
Think that's it for now.
I do have 2 things. One, why did they have they had their menu music playing the entire game, and it just made the game just felt really empty when you have this quiet ambient music playing constantly. Maybe that was just me. Maybe I should turn my music off, but it made the game feel really empty and like nothing was happening, because even in these big fights it's just this quiet, calm, forced music playing. It felt odd, and it felt you said last week that it felt like the game felt kind of like soft, I think is how you described it. Yeah, it felt it just, again, other than Richter, because he was very satisfying to play, it didn't feel like much any abilities had much impact. It didn't feel like it was very responsive. It just felt, just soft is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Squishy. Yeah, it didn't feel crisp. It didn't have that satisfying crispness you kind of want with impact. But other than that, yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on Predecessor. It was good, needs work.
I think that's my final thought. That's kind of the same thing I'll echo, is your point last week, Mangoose, of it not feeling crisp, it kind of having the opposite effect of what Overprime's over crispness had, right? And this was just kind of just on the other side and feels squishy, for lack of a better way to put it, right? But I think anyone that played the game knows what we're talking about, knows that squishy feeling that you kind of get when you're playing it. I think that's a great thing to kind of call back to.
Right on. Well, let's move away from Predecessor. Let's talk about Overprime now, because they announced an 11-day test coming soon. We don't know when. A lot of people are speculating that it's going to be May 28th or May 26th or 28th. I forget which. Just from how they like to put little codes in their videos, and like they had like 7 countries, 28 languages, and like people like, oh, 7/28, May 28th, you know. So I don't know if that's true or not, but
It sounds like something I do.
right? So maybe that's what it's going to be. I don't know. I've got a little bit of insider information on this upcoming test, but I do not know the date at all. But it is going to be for 11 days, and I'm really looking forward to that, and I really want to see how it holds up for 11 days, because that's been something I've been talking about for a while now. Is we get to play these games, and it's like the honeymoon phase never wears off because it's over in a weekend. I want to see how people react to Overprime after they've played it for like a week or so, you know? And if they still love it and enjoy it, then awesome. But I think we'll probably see a few people, you know, finding some chinks in that armor that they didn't think of before. But this is going to be a really good test. I'm very much looking forward to it, because as much as you could talk about Overprime being this and that and having too many, you know, being too arcadey or whatever, it was fucking fun. Like, I don't even give a shit about any of that rest of that stuff. Overprime was fucking fun, and I am really looking forward to playing it again. So, Jelly, what's your thoughts on Overprime 11 days?
Dude, I am so excited. It's ridiculous. Like, Mangoose, you and I talked about a lot. Like, Overprime, yeah, maybe, right? But like Predecessor and Faults, right? And then we played Overprime, and for me at least, I still have that itch. So I'm like, I want to play Overprime, man. Like, I want to get back in there and play Overprime, which blows my mind every time I think about it. And even playing Predecessor this weekend, there were a couple moments where I was like, you know, this just isn't Overprime. Like, I just kind of want to play Overprime. And so 11-day test, I'm so down. I'm ridiculously open for that. And the other thing is 11 days is long enough that they may push out a patch halfway through and test out their patch pushing capabilities, right? And that's because that's long enough to get through the honeymoon phase, establish what is actually good or needs balance tweaking, and then push out a patch, and then still have another couple days after the fact to see what the repercussions of that are. And I think that is a really cool thing to look at as well.
What do you think, Infamous? You look forward to it?
Yeah, I am. I haven't had a chance to try out Overprime yet, so I don't have too much to say on the game itself. But like, yeah, I'm super excited. I'm super excited to try it. It looks a lot of fun from the gameplay I've seen from like you and other creators. It looks really interesting. The only thing I think is, like, you mentioned like people finding the chinks in the armor. I just worry because the game is so fast paced. From like, you're fighting a lot more. It is a lot faster paced. I feel like people just might get burnt out over time. Like, when you're constantly fighting, like that's kind of the thing with a lot of MOBAs. It's that slow pacing that builds up to bigger fights. It's like when you're constantly fighting and fighting and fighting, you can get bored of it. So, you know, we'll see. But yeah, I'm super excited. Like, 11 days is a long time to try out a game and get familiar with it. I'm really excited to see that's going to be a lot of fun, and just see what they've done with different characters' kits. Like, it's cool to see how all the different companies have interpreted characters and like shifted their identity. Like, like Steel and Richter and Fault compared to Predecessor, it's like inverted with how they play in a lot of ways. It's cool to see. I want to see what their take was in Overprime and see how they've changed things. Yeah,
changed things with Scott in particular.
I forgot about that.
I gotta play more Kayla, man. I can't wait.
But this is something I was watching JPie's stream the other night, and one of his viewers brought up talking about which one would be the most fun to watch out of all the Parazombies, and I think Overprime would be the most fun for somebody that had never played Paragon, didn't know anything about MOBAs. Overprime would by far be the most fun to just sit down and watch if you're just watching a new game, and that says a lot. That says a lot.
It looks like a shooter. It looks like a shooter first. It does. Well, when Fault kind of feels in between, and Predecessor is firmly, this is a MOBA. Even when you're playing it easy, like, you can tell. And it's like, Overprime just looks good.
And Overprime, they spent so much time on immersive feedback too, with the hit stop animations and their sound effects and everything. Like, oh man, when you hit somebody with steel in Overprime or Scott in Overprime, like it feels like you just whacked somebody. But like you were saying in Pred, he didn't have sound effects for his basic attacks. So when you would hit a minion, it would did I hit it, or I don't know if I hit it or not.
Feel empty.
You know you fucking hit a minion with Scott.
Oh yeah.
And minions didn't even have a sound effect when they died. It's the worst.
I mean, to bring up another game in comparison is the Overwatch League blew up huge on Twitch and honestly ESPN as well when Overwatch first came out and the Pro League first started. Part of that is because from minute 1 you have fights breaking out.
Oh yeah.
Right? And it's engaging from the first minute. It's not like any MOBAs where the first 10 minutes is really like, well, we're going to sit over here and watch these two people poke at each other for 10 minutes. And then, oh, look, over there, they're poking at each other for 5 minutes, right? And that's not what it is. And Overprime
there's a gank
can capture that Overwatch feel in that from minute 1, you can get into engagements because you have all your abilities unlocked. And you can start that action so fast. And I think that's a huge benefit for them.
I agree with that completely. Like, I'm not a good example that I can use is, and this is definitely showing where I come from. I'm not big into most physical contact sports. I'm not that into them, except for hockey. And soccer to a lesser extent. I really like hockey because it's not stop and go. It's not like something happened and then we take a 5-minute break. The game went for 30 seconds and now another 3-minute break. Like in hockey, you'll see play for upwards of 5 minutes unbroken, just straight back and forth. You can see the strategy, you can see the action that's going on. It's just having that constant flow of action is really important for just keeping people's interest, retaining them.
Do you also enjoy maple syrup and poutine?
I literally made pancakes for me and my grandfather this morning before I went to work. I literally made pancakes this morning before I went to work.
You like hockey, eh?
Oh yeah, we really like that hockey.
No, I get what you're saying though. Hockey's a very dynamic sport and it's very fun to watch. Even though I don't like sports, I'll stop and watch a hockey game for a little bit. You know,
it's nice 100%. To watch the big guys with the knife shoes hitting around.
I don't know. Overprime, it's got its appeal, and it definitely has its appeal in the Asian community. So I think it's definitely going to survive alongside Fault or Pred. Whichever one comes out on top. People, I particularly underestimated Overprime, and
100%.
Yeah, they're knocking it out of the park. I can't wait to play again.
I don't blame people for underestimating it. When you hear it's like a MOBA, but we trim down all the farming stuff and it's just fighting. I can think of 2 MOBAs off the top of my head that said those exact things, and they're dead now. We're almost dead. I can think of 2 different big MOBAs, and now they're dead. That tried to market like that. It just people when you hear those words, you associate it with the many failed projects. You don't think about what it could be. But seeing the product that they have, just seeing it, I believe that this could be a big competitor. And it's a real thing that is very much a threat for the other companies. Yeah.
The other thing we had for Overprime, in their work in progress, they had looked like the top of a picture of Sevarog, and it said the beginning of the story. I'm not sure what that's about. It might be their Netflix series that they're supposed to be doing with Overprime.
I mean, their cinematic trailer was about Sevarog and killing the tree, whatever it was, right? So I imagine it would make sense that the beginning of the story starts with that and with him. Or with, what is his name?
Revenant?
No, not Sevarog. What's Sevarog's actual name?
It wasn't Akamash. That was Rampage.
Joe?
Demoriath sounds right, Joe.
It's close. It's something among those lines.
And they had Beatrice and Shade in there.
Yeah.
Please tell me Beatrice is Faye.
No, it's
please.
Countess.
That's Countess.
You're kidding. The
Faye is Tiana.
Yeah.
Tiana. Oh wow. They really do name characters, don't they?
Yeah.
They do.
That sure is a name you got there.
Beatrice Bloodsucker. um, that's about all I had for Overprime. Unless you guys got anything else.
Nope.
I just wish that their name, like, I get that they can't use the same names because Epic, I guess they still own the like IP to the characters. I don't know.
I don't know what's going on there.
Demorius,
like-
I was right.
But like, I do. Maybe in the future they will, but I hope that they change the names to something a little more thematically. Like, I get they can't call him Steel, but why not like Ferris or something? Because like Pharaoh, Iron,
Yeah.
like there were like names or names that feel more like name Countess something that feels more vampire-y.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just I don't know.
Beatrice.
Beatrice.
There you go.
Or name the Fae Beatrice instead and make her B-skin the default.
Yeah, their roster sounds like a roll call at an old folks' home.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cindy, Scott,
Kayla, Beatrice.
Kayla. Yeah.
Oh god.
What did they call Bellica something stupid too? I forget what it was.
Valora.
Oh, was it?
It's all right.
That sounds all right.
That's actually pretty good. That's also they're very generic names. They're like nothing.
They're all very generic.
They don't like when you hear the name like with League, you hear character names like Kale or like even if that's one of the more basic ones, like that sticks out. Like that's recognizable. That's iconic. Or like with Ethereal, like Dante. That like the name Dante, you immediately know who they're talking about. You hear Scott, and all I think of is a lawyer that is named Scott Steele.
I want a Scott lawyer skin now. Here we go.
Yeah.
Scott Steele, attorney
Instead
at
of his
law.
shield, he carries a briefcase.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Yes. This
Yes.
is the thing.
I've already
I'm in.
thought this all the way through.
And when he
I think I
when he
have a
bashed-
gift somewhere.
bashes you, just like legal documents fly out. When he ults you, it's a gavel sound.
Oh, it'd be great if he turned into a giant gavel and just.
Like he just yells order in the court or something. Objection.
Oh, shit.
All right, we claim the FTM 10%.
Yep, we need 10% of the skin.
Oh, and then they could tweak the skin if they did like a crossover. Just have a bunch of Ace Attorney and Scott Steele skin. That would be awesome. Ace Attorney Scott. That'd be great. Yeah.
Well, let's move away from Overprime. Let's talk about Fault. They just had a tweet asking the community what features they wanted added in. Not a lot going on for Fault this week. I will say something that Ryan Red cooked up that I've been participating in. They've been trying to get games with like Fault partners and like developers and stuff, and have everybody record at the same time in case something cool happens. And then they're gonna, even if it's on the enemy team, like if somebody on the enemy team does something cool, then they want to post that. They did their first post today, which was me getting killed by a gadget mine. But the funny part of it is as I'm running away, Armadillon blinks over the edge on Feng Mao directly into me, and we both get destroyed by the gadget mine.
Oh, it's the worst when someone has a gadget mine and they walk into you.
Yeah. Well, I was trying my best not to walk into anybody, but he blinked into me with Feng Mao. There's nothing I can do about that.
No, that's your fault, Mangoose.
You
You should have known.
Blame the jungle. Rule of thumb.
But yeah, that's about it for Fault. Let's just general thoughts on Fault. Since Infamous, since you do play Fault, what do you think about Fault compared to everything else? And
given Fault's the only one that's released in early access or whatever they're calling it, it's like you should be harsher, especially because they're charging money. But I enjoy how it feels. I think it definitely feels like it needs a once over for a 1.0 release for polish. But I think it feels quite good to play. I think the pacing is a little slow in the early game. I kind of wish that, I wish starter items had better stats. I think is what kind of feels iffy to me, is your first buy items feel weak. But I think it feels good. There are issues I have with it. Like the jungle feels small. The jungle feels very small to me. Mainly because there are 3 camps on each side for each team. And it just feels like it's so nothing compared to what Predecessor had, especially compared to what Ethereal has had. Ethereal their jungles, many plurals, feels very good to play. I very much enjoyed it. Definitely they could use some animation work, I think, in both sorry, in both games, but also in Fault. Here's one I haven't heard anyone mention. Every time you basic attack, you reset to your before you start the animation for your next attack, you reset to your default standing position, and it makes chaining basics feel like, I think in higher attack speed that no, it does happen in higher attack speed too, and it just makes basics feel not very fluid and makes them kind of stiff. Like especially or like I like how the game feels. I think it's good, but it definitely it needs work.
I think to echo that point of the the animation work or just the feel of the game for Fault, the thing that always is odd to me and has been since the beginning of Fault is it feels like you're in third person. And to quantify that, looking at like Overprime, when you're playing Overprime, despite being in third person, the impact feels like you're there, involved, first person, right there in the action.
I feel like you're right in the action
and Fault feels separated from that. It
you feel like you're watching from a distance, maybe.
It's not even a camera distance thing. I think it's just the feel of how things are set up in Fault right now.
I can agree with that, yeah.
But yeah, it feels third person, whereas instead of like Overprime is in third person but feels first person.
Also, I just want to say something. I was going to say this earlier when we were talking about Predecessor. I didn't get the chance, but this is for all the games. Maybe this is just because I come from Smite, and in Smite this is like a big useful UI option. The minimaps, like every game, is tiny. The minimaps are, especially in Predecessor, is tiny. I really wish I could adjust the position of my map and the size of it on my screen. Because it's really important. You need that information, and being able to like reduce its opacity and layer it so it's a quite big object on your screen, so you can get that information without having like look away from what you're doing. It's very, I would really like that.
Yeah, despite Smite's flaws, their UI customization is the best of any game I've ever seen.
On PC, not on console.
I'll give it that. Yeah, I'm a PC guy, so I'll give it PC specifically.
Yeah. But yeah, their UI customization is awesome. And I hope that even if just to a lesser extent, does come to the other games, because that's one, it makes you feel more attached because you've personalized it to exactly what you want. So you have a little bit of extra attachment. But also just making sure you feel comfortable playing the game. Big issue again with Predecessor. Wasn't comfortable, suffocating UI. It'd be nice, even if some people like that, sure, like legacy UI compared to modern or new, whatever. It'd be nice to have that customizability.
Absolutely.
I think as far as Fault goes, I think this Predecessor stress test will be driving more people into Fault. Oddly enough, that Predecessor doing something will help their competitor. But my fear is that people that will come from the Predecessor stress test come into Fault and then face what we face on a daily basis when we play Fault, which is insanely good players that will take zero mercy on a new guy.
Yeah, that's. I feel like that's a big risk. Although it's at least when I had newer players on my team, everyone was pretty like, "Oh, you're new? Yeah, okay, just be careful. We'll like jungles will gank you more often. Supports will rotate. Mid laners will take care of you more." It's like it feels like the community is okay with like newer players. It's not like you're at least going to get flamed.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people will, some people won't. It just depends.
Yeah, but when you have a player base of 30 players on low hours, which was the case last night, I feel like that people should know, like, maybe we should be nice to the new people.
Yeah. Fault's community is part of the reason Fault isn't succeeding right now.
No.
Unfucking fortunate.
Yeah, I really hope this would be a really great time for Strange Matter to reach out to other content creators of similar games, like Smite. Smite players are itching for a game that isn't literally broken right now. So, and given we've had some creators already play Predecessor, they're familiar with this new and different and scary MOBA. It would make sense if they reached out and like, hey, you want to do something we can sponsor you for a small amount or whatever. Like, it'd be cool. We'd love to have you. Because again, content creators can't even play the game, and their communities are angry. It feels like it'd be a smart idea.
I don't think they would even need to sponsor. They'd just be like, "Hey, we'll give you this game for free if you want to play it."
Oh yeah, that'd actually be a good idea. Like, here's the code. Here's like the codes to get all the characters or
Like,
some
hey,
characters.
did you like Pred? Well, we got a game that's kind of like that too. You want to
It'd
play?
be smart. It'd be smart because even just getting one of them, like, because I follow Smite content creators, even just getting one of the people who actually play games normally, you know, and aren't just like you actually get, yeah, like just getting one of them, that'd be enough. That'd be a huge spike in player base. At least would double the player base for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's not saying much, but it would.
I only know 2 Smite creators: Duke Sloth. Is that his name? Duke Sloth?
Yes.
And Mythimoo. And
Mithy is.
I think Mythimoo played Predecessor too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if Mithy has. The thing with. Oh, sorry. 1 second. I need to grab something. Yeah, the thing with Duke is he hasn't uploaded a single Smite video in almost a year.
Oh, really?
He has had the worst luck. He's been trying to go over to different games and branch away from just Smite for like 2 years. And the last game he really had some success with was New World. New World is dead.
Yep.
And he fully stopped uploading Smite content because it was hurting his algorithm. It was hurting the algorithm for him. So he was like, yeah, so it was like, this really screws with your retention and makes my channel less recommended, so I'm just going to stop Smite for a little while. And it's been a year. So he is a Smite content creator, hasn't really uploaded much. Mithy is like I upload every few days, every few weeks with like hyper edited content. But another one that did was Rexy. Rexy is a competitive quote unquote Smite player. He doesn't play the 5v5 mode, he plays 1v1 duel. Because Smite has many different game modes that you can play. But he's yeah, like he has a very dedicated audience. I know that. So him playing Predecessor will help with the retention.
Right on.
And yeah.
That's all I had to say about Fault. Unless you guys had anything else, we can move on to Ethereal.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I had something to say for like that tweet that they put out, like asking what players wanted. But
oh yeah, go for it.
Like the main things I wanted was, one is just like the jungle is small. I wish that there were more camps, and I wish the jungle was more interesting to path through. Again, with Predecessor, very enjoyable jungle to path through. It had a lot of different routes that you could take and different like ways to gank and enter lanes. But also, just I don't like the way that the jungles are laid out in a lot of these games. Like, I like correct me if I'm wrong, Ethereal's jungles are mirrored, or like properly mirrored, correct?
On Void Lane. Yes.
I'm just trying to remember.
On Void Lane, it's asymmetrical, so corner to corner matches.
Okay.
On Ice and Fire, it's a direct mirror of each other.
Okay. I'd prefer. Maybe this is just because I come from Smite. I do wish that they were mirrored proper. Like, red buff is always on the side of duo, or like the side of off lane. Blue is always on the side of duo. Stuff like that, because it makes pathing inconsistent. And it, like, if you're the off laner having to start with your jungle, you are just going to be behind a bit. You are going to hit level 2 second. You will be behind in lane if your laner knows what they're doing. It just feels like you can get punished or get rewarded just because you won the coin toss.
Yeah,
I mean, in a lot of these games, if you're starting on the duo favored side, and for instance, let's say Fault, right? Most junglers start red buff, and the game even tells you to start red buff when you're picking the jungle route. If you are on the lucky side to have duo as your your lane that can help leash for you, versus the other side that has the solo lane, it makes a difference. And it's more secure in counter jungling as well, because it's a lot more, you know, if they're starting off lane side, they're a slower start. So then you can make it across to their blue side and maybe take a camp or two before they can transition across the lane.
Yeah, or on the inverse, if duo, let's say they're playing an aggressive comp in duo, they can just if they get to go to lane immediately, they can just push lane and pressure you out. They get early levels, you get ganked, game lost in the first before the game started.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not a fan of that design. To me it feels really bad.
I just want Vault to fix the fucking bugs that are in the game.
Yeah.
Like the invisible wall coming into red buff side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's annoying.
Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if they can fix that stuff, that'd be alright. Now, let's move on to Ethereal. Ethereal didn't have any news, any announcements or anything, but I do want to talk about Ethereal and get the word out about that game, because it is an interesting concept, and a lot of people have been seeing it even more often. People talking about how Paragon is dead, and people shouldn't be even trying to remake Paragon. They're looking to move on to something else. Well, if you are like that, you feel that Paragon should just be laid to rest, but you aren't over third-person MOBAs, then you should check out Ethereal. So
yes, come to Ethereal, right? Yeah, let me coax these people in as best I can.
Infamous, you played the last Ethereal test. What did you think of Ethereal? This is going to be interesting coming from a Smite player too.
Mm-hmm.
Because correct me if I'm wrong. Ethereal was, at least I remember you had said, Mangus, like Ethereal wasn't a project based off of like a new Paragon. It was already beginning development before Paragon, or before the assets release and everything shut down.
Right.
It was more, if anything, looking at least what you said. Well, like looking at what Smite did wrong and wanting to do better. That's what I had heard, at least.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty on point. Ethereal started a couple months before Paragon officially was shutting down and the assets were released. And granted, we've used a handful of Paragon assets since then, but those have been hardcore placeholder.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, may as well if it's there and you're still in early development. And use what you can to get a working prototype.
Yep.
I had a ton of fun. I mainly played Talos in the jungle because his auto cancels are ridiculous.
Yes,
they weren't as fast. They definitely were. The post fire delay felt quite long on his one specifically. I know that's like a really small detail, but for someone who auto cancels, that's something to note. But the game felt a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my time with it. The UI was surprisingly good, with the caveat of when it worked. Because the first game I ever, and this is me absolutely going to dog on you for being mad about that, because no, fuck that UI. It literally, I couldn't see what my abilities did. My first ever game, 2 games, I literally didn't know because I was unfamiliar, because I hadn't read on your site much, on the Ethereal site beforehand. Literally didn't know what my kit did. That was a problem.
And well, good news is the UI is being reworked, so it's
going. Christ, I had a lot of fun with. I have a worry. I have a few worries of the game. Like, there's every character has 6, 7, because you have a class ability, your like risk reward ability, your main abilities, familiars, plus normal items and buffs and. Like laning is normal. It's just there's a lot going on. It feels like I almost got turned off because when I didn't know what was going on, it's just like, wow, I have no clue what's going on. I didn't even know I had a class ability on Talos for the first few games because I just couldn't read it. But also it's just there's so much. It feels like there's so much there. It's cool, but it feels like it's almost unnecessarily so much going on. Like, also with the having a 6th player is a cool evolution, especially because it's truly utilizing the 3D environment to its fullest, and that's awesome. But it feels like there's so much going on. There's a literal entire extra layer. There's entire extra dimension to playing. That is just, it could be very overwhelming. Mm-hmm. I'm someone who's been playing like MOBAs for years, and I found it was like I don't really get what's going on. But yeah. I had a lot of fun. Also, animations, obviously, very early. Game's not even close to release, so I'm not going to dog on it much. I feel like people were a little too much. Like, then again, you are asking for it when you have official character spotlights and you're showing off animations like that, it's people shouldn't harp on you that hard for it, but don't show it off like this is the best you have when it's obviously you have a lot of talent and a lot of knowledge in what you're doing, and that I get why, because show people who want to see, but at the same time you open yourself up to criticism at that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for the button presses, right, I've heard it thrown around several times, is that because all of Ethereal's items, every single item in Ethereal is passive. There are no active items directly in the game. So
Very
any
good.
purchasable item is all passive based, which gets rid of, depending on what game you're playing, 3 to 6 button presses.
That's true.
And with that, we kind of make up for it in the other buttons that you do have to press. But the distinction, I think, for us is even with those fewer button presses, technically, you're making more required button presses versus item actives in other MOBAs can be just optional, right? You're not, you still get an effect even if you don't use the active part of the item. Whereas in Ethereal, if you're not using your class ability, you're putting yourself behind, right? And so there is a difference there, despite there being similar actual button presses.
It's a skill gap. It's
Mhm.
a skill gap, and it's like in Fault. Like, yes, there are active items. I don't think I've built the only active item I can remember consistently ever building in Fault is which one? It's the one that give you mixed protections and an overshield on activate.
Like the battle plate.
Yeah, battle plate, because that's functions like the exact same as a active item in Smite, like or a relic, whatever they're called. I knew that, but other than that, like with having built in like extra button presses is kind of how you put it to make up for those lack of active items. With active items, it's also pacing. Like you're getting them partway through a game. So after you familiarize yourself with a kit and kind of how it's playing, then you can augment that with an active. When with Ethereal, you have just extra things to read when you're already reading 3 basic abilities, an ultimate, big ultimate, a passive, your other ability, your other ability, and just taking everything in. It feels like that maybe not even be pared down, but I definitely think class abilities feel redundant, at least to me. It feels like those could be mixed in somewhere else or implemented in a maybe more dynamic way that doesn't feel kind of homogenous for a class.
And
Maybe
part of the UI change that we're doing right now is to make a lot of those things more distinct on the UI. Like then as a new player, you can look at the UI and go like, oh, this thing, I press this button, does the thing, right? And so it's finding ways to make it more distinct and more prevalent to players as they get in the game for the first time.
Yeah, I'm really excited. What that character? It's the other Sky Slayer you showed off that isn't in the game yet, other than Talia.
Zero.
I'm really excited for. I've always really liked the like an angel aesthetic. I really want to know what that kid is, because when you give an angel a gun, that's always fun. He needs a skin with a shotgun, because you need an angel with a shotgun.
There you go.
Or just give him a shotgun, because that's always better.
Yeah, I mean, more bullets, more fun, right?
Exactly.
I will say, Ethereal, out of all of them, definitely feels the roughest, like the newest. Like it's definitely the earliest in development, even though it's been around for a long time. They had to create all their assets from scratch, so they're a little behind the Parazombies at least. But also with Ethereal, you could do the most fun shit in Ethereal.
Yes.
Compared to every other game, there's so much cool shit you can do in Ethereal, and like that makes it so much fun. And like you were talking about, yeah, there's a lot of button presses and a lot of stuff that you have to learn. But part of that is some of the fun for me, because you see people or you hear people like when you're playing with them come to the realization, like they're like, wait, so this guy, I could pick him up and grab him and throw him. Like, yeah, they're like, wait, there's edges on the map. Could I throw them over the map? I'm like, yes, you can. They're like, yes.
Watching people put those pieces together,
yeah,
right, is one of the greatest things, right? Like, and yeah, the throwing people off of the map, or flying around, flying from lane to lane, or jumping from lane to lane, or whatever it is. yeah, seeing those like light bulb moments, super cool.
Here's the best way. I think the best way I can describe my experience was most MOBAs are very controlled experiences for balance and for very specific outplay. Ethereal feels like if you ask a question, the answer should normally, if you're asking a question any sane man should ask, and some not so sane men, the answer should be yes, you probably can.
Yeah.
And I feel like as time will go on, if Ethereal, hopefully as Ethereal lasts and ages and grows, some of those edge cases might be adjusted or tweaked for just being able to grab a tank at full health and say go away and let them die off a cliff, fall off a cliff and die. Maybe that's like, maybe tanks shouldn't be grabbed as long or something, whatever. It's like maybe those edge cases might be touched and reined in a little, but just the core design of the game seems to be, it's a sandbox as much as it is a MOBA.
Mm-hmm.
It really feels like you built a MOBA in a sandbox with the goal of making it a sandboxy experience, and it feels amazing. Like I don't care much for games that are super rough. Fault feels like it's a rough game that got it right. Predecessor feels like it's a polished game that didn't know how to make it feel satisfying. No comment on Overprime. And Ethereal feels like it just feels like it has so much potential and it is doing everything right. It just needs some more time in the oven. Mm-hmm. And everyone knows that because everyone should know this game, this isn't what it's going to look like when it's done. Mm-hmm. This is these are early animations, didn't you guys just completely redo the map?
We redid the map, and I was actually going to bring up Talos specifically.
Yes, you designed him.
If you look at Talos from 2018, when the studio started and he was first designed, yes, versus the new Talos that we just released announced last week, they're night and day differences, right? And so, and the new Talos is much more to a, for lack of a better way to put it, like full release type of studio that at least that I would expect as a player. Right, where I would be like, that's a new character. That looks sick. What does he do? Who is he? Whereas original Talos didn't look bad, but he wasn't that same level of detail and design and all of those things.
It looks like he has personality. His design has personality to it. Old Talos looked like dude with fur and axe. This one looks you very much leaned into that like primal, like almost prehistoric, like hunter aesthetic. It feels like again, with Smite, they have a skin line that looks a skin design style that looks exactly like what Talos is, and that is absolutely a compliment because Smite has amazing skins. That is, yeah, Smite is like wild how good their skins are, and like that looks just like what I would expect from a premium skin. I would want to buy. That design looks really cool. Mm-hmm. I am curious, was that purely a remodel, or did any like animations get touched up, or was this like just a redesign?
It's a complete visual rework for the most part. I wouldn't say not everything got reworked, but the things that needed to be reworked, so some animations, visual effects, some of that kind of stuff, it all got updated alongside his new model.
Yeah, I'm really excited. The game looks awesome. I'm really, especially like you shut off Frost, right? Mm-hmm. Your quadruped. That looks really like I want to know what that kit does. I really want to, especially I know. But I'm really curious at how, because there are things you're restricted in some ways with a quadruped that you have to get around one way or another, but it enables a different fantasy of what and a different player experience. I'm also the hitbox. Okay, I need to know, how are you handling the hitbox with quadruped?
I can't say anything. So.
Because that's going to be a pain if that's a small. I assume it won't be, because that would be insufferable to just miss a shot because it went over him because you're aiming at eye level. I hope that's not. There's some way, but I'm super excited. I'm really excited. I love the name, by the way. I love the name. It's an ice wolf. What do we call it? Well, it's like Frost. Say that again. Got it.
Should name it Jerry. You know what I've realized about Ethereal? It's like it's a MOBA that was created by saying yes to a 12-year-old. Like, well, can I fly? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I climb that rock?
Yeah.
Sure. Can I punch it and blow it up?
Yeah.
What if these legs were broken, like up in the air? Okay.
I want But at the same time, the 12-year-old has wonderful ideas like, what if he's an edgy guy, but he has a bow, but he's like a computer virus? No.
That's what Ethereal is. It's saying
And even
yes
now
to
our
a
design team
12-year-old.
is all cringing, being like, I'm not a 12-year-old.
I would love to. I would love to be your design team now. Like their kits. Some of those kits are awesome, and it's obvious you guys are just getting started. Because right now, I know. Because like you have the groundwork and the foundation of what it plays like. I can't wait to see when you guys really experimenting with fundamentals. Because like you look at some characters leagues released, like there are memes about how over designed some of them are, but they are very unique, very interesting, very like one of a kind. Smite has a few of those type of characters too. I'm really excited to see the releases when people will say, "Why would you ever design this? This is horrendous." I can't wait. I can't wait because those are going to be awesome. Because everyone's going to hate them because they aren't going to know how to fight them. Yeah, I'm so excited. That's going to be so fun.
All right, guys, let's start wrapping it up. I'm going to skip the discussion topic this week because we have been going for well over an hour, and I like to try and keep these at about an hour. So we'll just end it with the ethereal discussion. I think we talked about a lot of really important stuff tonight, and even if you disagree with some of the stuff we said, put it down in the comments, but don't be combative about it. If you disagree, let me know why you disagreed with anything anybody said, and we'll discuss it and have a good conversation about it. But that's going to about wrap it up for this week. Let's go to plugs. Infamous, you got anything you want to plug? You got like a YouTube or a Twitch or anything? You just hanging out?
Just hanging out at the moment. Might in the future, but not now.
Right on, dude.
Yep.
Jelly, anything to plug?
I don't think so this week. I'm going to start getting streams up again pretty quick here. I'm finally settling from moving, so
awesome.
All those good things. But yeah, I don't think nothing for this week. What about you, Mangoose?
I got nothing to plug. Let's go ahead. Just any final thoughts you guys want to say to the community, Infamous?
Give Fault a chance because it is genuinely, one, you can actually play it. Two, please play it because it needs players. But no, like it feels great. It does feel good. It feels different than Paragon, but don't just think it's not Paragon, so it's bad. It feels great. Its UI is, in my opinion, the best out of any of the games right now. Like it feels good. There's still like development. They're still releasing new characters, new heroes. Their balance is pretty good. With outliers have been dealt with pretty quick. Check it out. Yeah. And Ethereal is awesome. Don't think it's a scam. It's an awesome game. It's so fun. Because I know people thought it was a scam. That's so fun. Yeah.
Jelly, you got anything you want to say?
No final thoughts other than I do have something to plug suddenly. Go watch Mangoose's short about him dying in the enemy's jungle when he tried to go and invade and failed miserably, and his teammates left because they said they were leaving and Mangoose didn't follow. Yeah, go watch that short because I've watched it like 50 times at this point and I keep laughing every time.
How many times, Jelly, in all of these games have I saved you when you've done the dumbest shit?
So many times. I consistently below 50 health and Mangoose saves the day every single time.
The one time I need it.
Oh, I'm nowhere to be found. I have no qualms about that one, Mangoose.
Yeah, you said it pretty early. I got no mana. I'm out.
But you didn't listen. This is my point.
There's nothing I can do.
I said it before you started recording. I'll say it again. Mangoose, that was your fault because you trusted your team. You do not do that.
Agreed.
This is a MOBA.
Now, I should always be able to count on you, but you should never count on me.
Jungle diff, support diff. That is the facts of life here.
Exactly what it is.
Oh, shit. Well, all right, guys. Appreciate everybody coming out. If you're watching the premiere, appreciate you hanging in there. If you're watching this as a video, appreciate you watching. But for now, this is the For the Minions crew signing off. You guys have a good one. And you can't wave, Infamous.
No.
I'll wait for him.
Mangoose. Special shout out to channel members Foolish Bloodhunter, Jellyknees, Meow Mix for Men, Stunt, Ferrith, and Raven.